Hello and welcome. Today we are talking about concluding paragraphs and specifically a concluding paragraph in an essay that is a literary analysis essay. We always want to think about the purpose and the audience for our essay or for any type of writing that we do. And so for a literary analysis essay, the purpose is to analyze a piece of literature. Your audience might be a teacher, might be a parent, might be an instructor, a professor, or somebody like that, or you might be making your essay available to a wider audience. But think about what the purpose is and who your audience is as you're writing with every step of the process. So let's jump into the concept of the concluding paragraph and how to set this up. If you'd like to take a minute to warm up, and if you've been working through the essay writing process, you can take out the handouts you have, access the notes you have, and just look back at your thesis. If you're in a situation where you can turn and talk to somebody, fantastic. If not, no problem, no worries. Just think about it yourself. But look back at your thesis statement. Make sure that you have that in the forefront of your mind. Make sure that that's clear. You can share that with a partner or see if they can identify the structure of your essay and where you're going with that essay from the thesis statement. But whether or not you're with somebody else, just think back to your thesis statement. Make sure that that is front of mind as we move here through the last part of writing your essay. You can pause the video here if you'd like. Okay, so let's talk about the conclusion paragraph in your typical literary analysis essay. Now, we are thinking about an essay that's maybe 4, 5, maybe 6 paragraphs long, and you're analyzing a text. So your conclusion paragraph, it should be pretty brief, meaning it's not going to be as long, most likely, as your body paragraphs. It's going to use transition words and phrases. You want to connect what you've done earlier in the essay with what you are tying together here in the concluding paragraph. It should definitely not introduce new details that you haven't previously discussed. It should not really introduce a new idea. You might connect your topic to the wider world, but that's not the same thing as introducing a new idea. For a 5-paragraph essay, usually you've got about 3, 4 sentences or so in that concluding paragraph. Now, if you are in a classroom setting and your teacher has given you a specific specific information about how long something needs to be, obviously defer to your teacher. But generally speaking, 3 or 4 sentences is appropriate for a concluding paragraph on your typical 5-paragraph essay. You're going to restate or revisit the thesis, but you don't want to be repetitive and you don't want to be redundant. That can feel hard, that can feel tricky, but you want to make sure that you leave your reader feeling a sense of closure with your thesis clearly in their mind. And so you do have to find a way to revisit it or restate it. But obviously, if it's the exact same words, that's repetitive. So it might take a little bit of work, might take a few drafts, and that's okay. You also want to avoid cliches, and cliches can be tempting to do in the concluding paragraph. Cliches come from a point of truth. When we say love conquers all, there's an element of truth to that, but because it's been said in those words so many times, it has turned into a cliche. So if you want to use that concept that love conquers all, you've got to think about a way to reword that into something that sounds more insightful and more unique to you, and ideally even has some of your voice in there. So you might say something like, love overcomes even the most heinous obstacles. I don't know. That's just an example, but I'm saying put your own spin on it. Use your own words. Try to make it unique and don't phrase it in the same way that it has always been phrased before. Okay, so here's a visual, and this is worth thinking about as you are structuring your concluding paragraph. Now, we have talked about the intro paragraph as an inverted pyramid because your intro paragraph, you start broad, and then you get more specific because you're talking about a certain text, and then you get very specific because you end with your thesis statement. That's the structure of your intro paragraph. A conclusion paragraph is the opposite. It goes from very specific to more general. And the reason why is because you are transitioning from the last point that you just made in that last body paragraph, and then you are connecting that to the broader meaning of the topic. And then you want to leave the reader with a final statement, which is somewhat broad and essentially it connects to the whole human experience. So again, this can be hard. This can even sometimes feel like the hardest part of the paper because it really requires a lot of thought. But if you structure it this way, it's going to make sense to your reader. It's going to feel organized, and it's going to feel like there's a sense of closure to this essay. So let's look through a few examples, and I want you to be thinking about that structure as we look through these examples. Think about the specific and then how it gets broader, and now how it ends quite broad and possibly relating to the whole human experience. All right, let's read this one. Even though her dazzling beauty sets her apart from others, ultimately it is her humble character that defines Cinderella. Like many heroines, she does not let her unfortunate circumstances diminish her internal beauty. The true worth of a person cannot be thwarted by difficult circumstances or the ill intent of others. So hopefully you can see here how this writer has taken the concept, how her beauty sets her apart from others, sure, but it's her humble character that defines her. Most likely, the body paragraph before this concluding paragraph was about her humble character. Maybe they spent a little bit of time on her beauty, but they are probably transitioning from her humble character and how that was really so important. And then this goes into some analysis here that, like many heroines, she doesn't let her unfortunate circumstances diminish her internal beauty. So you see how this is making it a little more broad. We were talking about Cinderella. Now we're talking about many heroines that also share this quality. Then our third sentence here, we're talking about humanity in general. The true worth of a person cannot be thwarted by difficult circumstances or the ill intent of others. So that is analysis. It's the person's thought, their insight and observation, but they are applying that to the whole human experience. So they have taken it quite broad there, but not so broad that it doesn't still have to do with what's going on in this essay, which is difficult circumstances and overcoming those difficult circumstances. So this is just a visual again, where you can see how this breaks it down. We go from specific, we transition, we make it a little bit broader, and then we make it quite broad and essentially relate it to the whole human experience. Okay, here's another example. If you'd like to pause the video and read this one and think about it on your own, you can. If you have somebody around you that you can turn and talk with, fantastic. But think about how this conclusion is set up from more specific to more general to very general. And then also think about, what do you think the rest of this essay was probably about based on this concluding paragraph? Because you should be able to figure out from the concluding paragraph what the essay was most likely about. We'll go ahead and read this one. It says, although Buddy the Elf's childlike wonder is admirable, he ultimately has to adapt to the world around him. He matures as he learns to conform to the knowledge his new world expects of him, but he maintains joy in the simple things and brings that joy to others. His zest for life is a powerful reminder that happiness is a choice, although many obstacles will threaten it. All right, so you can pause the video here and think through that a little bit. So this one is set up a little bit differently from the one before it, but not too much, and it still works out great for concluding paragraph. You can see, of course, that you've got the specifics here that we're starting with. You know, he's admirable, but has to adapt to the world around him. This is probably going from the last body paragraph in front of this one, which most likely talked about how he had to adapt, but how he was able to keep himself even as he adapted to the world around him. Then we have another sentence here that also talks about his transformation. And then we go into basically how this relates to the whole human experience, even though it's just part of this last sentence here. Happiness is a choice, although many obstacles will threaten it. That's analysis that is related to the whole human experience, that they are applying this to everyone. That's like a universal truth. So we talk very specifically with his situation, and then we apply it to more generally to humanity in general. Now, if you wanted to perfectly set that up with our pyramid structure, maybe you could add a sentence here that more gently transitions from Buddy into the whole human experience, and that would work as well. With writing, you have many choices to make along the whole process, but in general, if you stick with this framework, that's going to set you up well for your concluding paragraph. Let's look at one final example. This is from The Count of Monte Cristo. This is from an actual piece of literature or the film. Either one, same ideas. Okay, so let's read through this one. And again, think about what was probably the focus of this essay and think about how this paragraph is structured in that pyramid structure going from specific to general to more broad. Revenge may have allowed Edmund to remake himself as the Count, but it left him morally conflicted and emotionally alone. Although his quest for vengeance gave him power over his enemies, it also stripped him of his personal connections and his ability to find peace. By the end of the film, Edmund must face the reality that revenge, while powerful, cannot restore the life he lost. Instead, it leaves him with a deeper sense of emptiness. Edmund realizes the truth that applies to all people. True peace can only come through forgiveness, not destruction. Okay, so again, you're moving from specific to more broad because you're talking about what specifically happened to Edmund. He remade himself as the Count, but how this affected him, and really these different pieces of his story. But then they end the paragraph on what applies to all of humans, which is that true peace can only come through forgiveness, not destruction. Ultimately, revenge did not get him where he thought it would get him. So this essay, most likely, if you're just even reading this concluding paragraph, you can probably tell that the author, what they did in their essay was talk about revenge and its effects on Edmund, maybe his transformation, maybe his identity, and how this preoccupation with revenge affected his identity over time and where that left him. Something like that's probably a character analysis or a theme analysis on Edmund and his relationship with revenge. So I hope this helped you a little bit to see how you can set up your concluding paragraph. Though it's a short paragraph, it does require some deep thought and thinking about how you will take this specific character or this specific theme that you're writing about, this text that you are analyzing, and how you're really going to connect it to something beyond the text. That's what you want to do in the concluding paragraph. Leave your reader thinking about something that matters beyond this text. So you want to show that you've thought about the text, you have analyzed it, you have made some good insights into it, but you've also connected it to the wider world and the fuller human experience beyond just this book or movie or play. Hope this helped. Thanks so much.